Hello and welcome to the International Airport Online Summit 2020. I'm Craig Waters, the editor of International Airport Review. Over the next 5 days, we have a fantastic programme for you of in-depth webinars, case studies and panel discussions to examine how airports and the aviation sector are managing their operations as they enter the restart and recovery phase post-COVID-19 and how airports have managed the impact of this global pandemic as they look to the future. Thank you to everyone who is joining us, whether you're watching live or watching back on demand. We know these are challenging times for everyone, but the aim of our online summit is to provide a platform for our audience to keep up to date with some of the latest and most interesting developments from around the world, and also for you to keep connected to and make new connections with industry experts. COVID-19 has without doubt impacted every airport and quite possibly changed how airports operate in the future. And of course, passenger confidence regarding air travel has taken a massive hit. The sector will not be able to recover and move forward if passengers remain wary of the airport experience. But we must all look to the future and work together to ensure our airports welcome back pre-coronavirus levels of passenger traffic. And I'm sure the airport industry will make it through. I hope that you all make the most out of your attendance today at this summit. Please join as many of the sessions as we have available as possible. Please ask the speakers your questions and join conversations. And don't forget to also visit our virtual exhibition area where you can watch product demonstrations and learn more about our sponsors. I will now hand over to Sarah Samuel, Head of Airport IT for Asia Pacific at Amadeus, who is moderating our first session. So Sarah, it's now over to you, please. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Greg. Welcome, everybody. And thank you for joining our presentation and panel discussion on the blueprint for recovery, how airports can address the new operating environment during COVID-19. We have a great panel and I look forward to the discussions with the panel members. We also have a Q&A session, so please send us your questions through the platform Q&A section. So to those of you I know in the audience, it's a pleasure to speak with you again. To those I'm yet to meet, my name is Sarah Samuel and I head Airport IT for the Asia Pacific region at Amadeus. I have been in Airport IT coming on to about 25 years now, and it's been a great privilege to be part of this ever-evolving industry and contributing to the changing nature of airport operations. The following presentation is based on how our Airport IT team within Amadeus have been working with our airport partners, airlines as well, and globally since the onset of the pandemic. So it's based on conversations we've had with our customers, what we've jointly identified and determined as key priorities, and solutions which we have collaboratively developed and implemented. So sit back and I hope you find this session of value. Next slide, please. The impact of COVID-19 on global travel cannot be overstated, and I'm going to be using the most used word in 2020, unprecedented. The impact has been unprecedented on our industry, but in adversity, there is opportunity for creativity. Throughout this presentation, we're going to explore 6 components which will be essential in restoring passenger confidence and ultimately enabling the travel industry to chart a course to recovery. So folks, the recovery is beginning. The 6 components are collaboration between all travel stakeholders, including travel IT partners, mobility to introduce new models of service which extend operations beyond the terminal, adaptability to new government and industry regulations so that we meet our evolving passenger expectations, automation to ensure operational effectiveness and maximum cost efficiency, flexible commercial models which enable airports, airlines, and other stakeholders to contain costs during times of low traffic, and remote operational support which minimizes the impact of ongoing disruption. Next slide, please. Addressing the challenges brought on by COVID-19 requires more than traditional commercial relationships. It takes genuine partnership between airports and their service providers, including Airport IT or travel IT providers. Consultation, collaboration, and co-creation will be essential in effectively meeting the demands of the new dynamic operating environment. Not only because new ways of doing things are required, but also because the pace of change has increased so dramatically. Projects that may have once taken 12 months to complete now need to be done either in a quicker time frame or in some instances in a much longer time frame because of restrictions like travel, interstate or cross-border restrictions being put in place. And a lot of this work needs to be done remotely, not at site, not in person. So against this backdrop, airports need partners they can trust to work hand in hand with them as they work to adapt to the new requirements. Solutions can no longer be one size fits all. They need to be tailored to meet the unique needs of each airport, their airline customers, passengers during this evolving times of regulations and laws, etc. These past 7 to 8 months, we have worked with our customers to support and collaborate with them, and each of them have had unique requirements, and we have had to be creative in their needs, in how we meet their needs, and to meet their needs and to meet our needs as a supplier, and to arrive happily at a position that both them and us could navigate and manage. This means working in an environment filled with trust. So the next few slides that I'm going to go through, I'm just going to give you some examples of how we've worked with our airports and airline partners to support their unprecedented operations and to give you the 6 recommendations that I mentioned earlier. Next slide, please. With a strategic partnership in place, we begin to introduce new ways of doing things. One example of this is at Perth Airport in Australia, where FIFO, which is the fly-in, fly-out workers, have continued throughout the pandemic to fly between the city and the mining sites in regional West Australia. Perth Airport have implemented many safe travel measures, and we have also supported them with technology measures. To ensure passengers can be handled safely and in the new expectation of social distancing, we collaborated with Perth Airport to introduce new portable check-in desks, which are essentially pop-up check-in desks. These portable desks means Perth could offer check-in in multiple new locations to disperse operations and to reduce congestion in the check-in hall. Using the desks, Perth Airport could check in passengers from curbside, the car park, or off the airport entirely. Additionally, at times of high volumes, they can actually roll this out to increase capacity when travel resumes in the normal manner. Another example of how portable technology could assist airports and airlines is one of our airline customers needed to repatriate a large group of passengers coming off a cruise ship in the Caribbean. At the outset of the pandemic, this popular cruise destination was inundated with passengers who needed to get home and not get stranded in the Caribbean. But the airport's infrastructure could not absorb such large numbers of passengers. And so in a matter of hours, the airline contacted us and we were able to deploy our check-in, create pop-up check-in and backdrop points, which were installed to process these passengers. So using a standard 4G connection, the agents were able to connect up to our portable cloud-based common use devices and begin to service passengers from non-traditional check-in points. So introducing new services such as this doesn't need to be hugely complex or costly for airports or airlines. Airports can start small with a small number of off-airport 4G, 5G check-in kits, and then scale up as needed with our ACAS kits, and which can run in parallel with legacy queued infrastructure. Next slide, please. So at a time when aeronautical and non-aeronautical revenues are at all-time lows and airports are being challenged to cut spending, it's never been more important to leverage existing investments and to maximize the effectiveness of existing infrastructure. By adapting your existing infrastructure instead of big investments in infrastructure upgrades, airports can not only reduce cost and complexity, but can also take the time needed to deploy new services trial them, and adopt them as necessary. An example of this is at Avinor Airports in Norway, where the airport group needed to address new demands for contactless journey as passengers became anxious about touching surfaces at the airport due to the pandemic. They needed to build passenger confidence and change the passenger processing before the summer traffic with safer check-in options. So we worked with Avinor. We were able to introduce an end-to-end contactless journey through the modification of their self-service software, as well as upgrade their existing kiosk and automated backdrop hardware via the introduction of contactless printers and scanners. Taking this approach, along with close consultation with Avinor, we were able to take the project from conception to deployment in just 4 months. And all of this was done remotely. Next slide, please. The global pandemic has heightened passenger concerns regarding congestion at typical airport congregation points, such as queuing in at check-in or the security lines, hygiene of surfaces within the airport environment. And so as travel resumes, we anticipate that the industry will see strong preferences by passengers to actively reduce time spent in queues, avoid or reduce human-to-human interaction throughout their passenger processing journey, avoid physically touching surfaces and devices within the airport environment. Cloud platform and automation are seeing the largest, most rapid adaptation in COVID times in most industries, from retail, food and beverage, manufacturing, even car sales are putting in cloud and automation, cloud-based technologies and automation to reduce, contact with devices. And we're seeing the same adaptation taking place in our industry, which is aviation. So as airports respond to these changes in passenger behavior, we believe that the rate of deployment and sophistication of self-service automation, touchless solutions, and biometrics will accelerate as airports and airlines will be looking for scalable solutions. This scalability to contain costs is perhaps best exemplified in one of our airports in Asia Pacific, which at the outset of the pandemic chose to mothball a number of terminals to minimize operating costs and allow for upgrade of terminal works to take place while traffic was reduced in one of these mothballed terminals. At this airport, when air travel began to decline, they were able to power down their auto backdrop units and quickly moved the airline, still operating, to other backdrop units in the adjacent terminals. And we supported them in these activities, thereby rapidly scaling down capacity and associated costs to match the new operating environment. These cost savings contributed to them to explore new passenger processing technologies like your face is your passport and your boarding pass type biometrics to be ready when passengers return. Next slide, please. So under traditional airport commercial models, pricing remained fixed despite real-world fluctuations in demand. During the pandemic, this has become a significant challenge for airports as they seek to renegotiate contracts in response to unprecedented decline in passenger numbers. Renegotiating contracts with suppliers and partners have been complex, difficult, and time-consuming at a time when agility is needed more than ever. What's needed is a more flexible approach which aligns pricing with actual usage, so airports can scale their cost in line with demand. With cloud-based solution, which allows more flexible commercial models to be put in place, airports can readily respond to peaks and troughs in demand, containing costs at times of low traffic volume and quickly scaling up as passengers return. Technology and their contracts cannot be seen as bolt-on functions, but need to be fully integrated with operations to allow flexibilities as amplified by COVID-19. And let's be serious, folks. Viruses in the 21st century spread at supersonic speed and come at us faster than ever if history is the track record we measure ourselves against. The Spanish flu at the turn of the 20th century, and then less than 100 years later in the 21st century, we have been hit with SARS, influenza A and B, COVID-19, and all of this in the span of 12 years. Commercial agility is key as technical and operation agility is as well. Next slide, please. At Amadeus, we have been providing remote solutions since the company was founded in 1987. And from 2014, we've deployed our cloud platform to both airports, multi-airport groups, airlines, and ground handlers. We were able to move our entire workforce to remote working within a week, if not days, once the decision was made. And that meant during the pandemic, we have been able to continue to support our customers remotely. For example, at Queen Alia International Airport, we worked with their teams to overhaul the airport systems without any one of our own teams being on site. Through a combination of remote installation and close coordination via online conference calls, we were able to ensure the deployment was completed on time as per the project timeline. Similarly, in Stuttgart, Germany, during the pandemic, we were able to begin the transition of 200 check-in counters and gates, as well as 30 self-service kiosks to our cloud platform, despite restriction on travel throughout Europe. In Japan, our teams worked with one major airport to redesign its airport management systems, entirely done remotely. The complexity of the systems redesign of this scale really put remote collaboration to the test, as we needed to organize 37 distinct workshops with teams based in Japan, Germany, France, Spain, and Singapore, all working via video conference with simultaneous translation support. The agility, technical, operational, and commercial flexibility provided by our cloud-based solution and by our team with their know-how convinced this airport to change their minds of moving from an on-prem solution to our cloud-hosted solution. Next slide, please. So the world, as we know, has changed. Our customers, the travelers, have changed their buying and travel behavior. We as an industry need to be more prepared to service these travelers when they return to traveler. So if I leave you with 6 recommendations, they would be: develop strategic partnerships with travel stakeholders to understand passenger needs and restore confidence. Leverage these partnerships to enable new ways of doing things like moving check-in to off-airport. Or when introducing new services like contactless journey, adapt your existing investment to minimize cost and complexity. Use automation to enable greater scalability to demonstrate value to your passengers, but also to your airline customers. Negotiate flexible commercial models to bring your cost in line with actual usage. And consider remote support to ensure operations and deployments can continue despite disruptions. The good news, folks, is that travel will be back, and we will be ready for the evolution of travel. So I encourage you to go to our website, download our Blueprint to Recovery, which has a lot of detailed recommendations. Thank you for listening. And now I'm excited to move on to our panel discussion, and it's with great pleasure I welcome our panelists. So first off, we have Leila Azek-Larsko. Sorry, Leila. I hope I got that mostly right. Our CIO from Finavia. Leila is an IT professional with a passion for improving IT and business stakeholder relationship, building change together and enhancing the productivity of companies through automation. Leila has been with Finavia and the aviation industry for about 1.5 years now. And before that, she had a long career in IT, data management, and regulations, supporting different industries like banking, healthcare, and manufacturing. And Leila will be sharing with us some interesting things that Finavia are carrying out at their airports throughout Finland. Next up, we have Scott Woodward, COO of Perth Airport. Scott has been the Chief Operating Officer at PAPL since October 2018. Scott is a senior executive leader with extensive experience in operation, leadership, working with Tier 1 clients on a global basis. Scott had previously worked for Toll Energies and Marine Logistics, where he had held executive roles and director roles, managing the Asia Pacific business focused on land-based and offshore oil and gas activities. He holds a master's in business administration and a holder of a Class 1 Master Marine certificate. Next up, we have Richard Dinkelman. After graduating electronics engineering, Richard had become a respected business leader in high technology environments. He successfully managed and developed manufacturing projects, a variety of business units, including logistics support, sales, and marketing operations. He has 12 years experience in aviation industry, amongst others leading ICM to becoming the provider of the world's most proven self-service backdrop solution. His passion is seeing ICM play a significant role in transforming the traveler check-in process and bringing it forward to the 21st century. ICM is now a part of the Amadeus family, yay, and we're truly excited to have ICM as part of our family. So let's get started. Okay. So welcome Leila, Scott, and Richard to the panel discussion, and thank you for joining us. For your airports that you have implemented, could you share with us the top 2 recovery items that you're adapting? And also, please, could you share with us some of the challenges, maybe the top 2 challenges you have faced in the wake of COVID? Maybe we start with Leila.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so if I think it from the IT perspective, because I'm responsible for IT in Finavia, and start with the top 2 challenges. I think that the first one is quite obvious and common for everybody in this industry, is the financial impact, which we have seen, and of course, sort of our blueprint to recovery, and that one is of course extensive saving programs. So I think that's also common to many airports and companies in the industry. But from IT perspective, we are contributing to the savings program sort of directly by cutting costs, but also looking into ways of making the company more efficient and agile going forward. So these kind of moments of crisis can also be a very good ways to learn new ways of doing our work. So we are thinking how we can share information better for all of our airport stakeholders, because that really was the challenge in the beginning, because this whole thing came so sudden in a way, and it was new for everybody. So how to share the information that the different stakeholders need at the airport, and also how to optimize our processes and actual use of our workforce. So we have been limited in the actual working hours of the workforce, and how to sort of make the most efficient use of that. So we are working together with our IT partners, but also we have done some own software development on these areas. So especially on the areas of situational awareness and optimizing stand allocation or some kind of cleaning processes, which was quite and has been quite key now. But the second sort of challenge and then the blueprint, we notice the remote working, the increase of remote working, and again, sort of from IT perspective, there the biggest challenge was the sudden jump to it, and everybody had to have tools and skills to do it practically in a day, and then of course the cybersecurity aspects of the remote working. So we have been trying to balance the smooth working and also the secure working environment. But in general, that has been going well, and some of the jobs we thought that you can't do remotely and you can't sort of manage remotely have been actually successful, because we have just had to do so. Yeah, so we at Finavia, we believe in the great position we have built as a transfer airport, especially sort of connecting Asia to Europe and the other way around, or Finland as a sort of safe destination to travel. And we continue to invest to our future through airport expansion projects in Helsinki and Lapland. And that has been quite interesting choice because, of course, on the other hand, we have had been struck with the financial impact of this COVID-19, and then on the other hand, we have had major extension programs underway. So we have decided not to stop those because we really want to build for the future. So that's something
you're preparing for recovery.
Yes.
So you're preparing for recovery, which is
definitely
great.
Yeah. So two biggest things indeed. So the financial impact and then the remote working. So there in both of them, I think we are sort of well underway and preparing ourselves for the future.
All right, thank you, Leila. Scott, so what have you guys been doing at Perth Airport in terms of blueprint for recovery and the challenges? Top two.
Yeah. Thanks, Leila, and thanks, Sarah, and welcome to everyone that's online. Yeah, lots of unique challenges for us, and I think our blueprints around the financials, and we could talk forever about financials, but at the end of the day, unless passengers get back on planes, we're not going to get out of this quickly. So there's a couple of focus areas for us. One is real engagement with our local state and federal governments with tourism. And there's two facets to that. There's business travellers and then there's leisure travel. Business travellers, I think, will come back as part of the economy. I think we're predicting or certainly feeling that 70 or 80% of the business travellers will probably come back quite quick once borders are down and people can travel freely. We may lose 20-30% as an industry because of exactly what we're doing now, being online. We're probably our worst enemy doing it online at the moment, but it is part of the future. People working at home, people using online platforms. So I think we will see a shift from some business travel. So our focus is really around the leisure travellers. And one, as a destination, how do we make Perth and Australia a destination? So it's actually using and leveraging tourism bodies, working with state government, putting sponsorship in place. But let's not forget effectively the overall business development side of the airport, keeping in really close contact with the airlines. Airlines are in just as much or more trouble than the airports. We need to stay really close to them. We need to be really flexible about some of our commercial agreements, which we'll probably touch on later on. Because if the airport's not here, the airlines can't fly here. If the airlines don't exist, they can't bring the passengers here. So we're in a bit of this catch-22 situation. And I think the work we're doing with state governments on making a destination Perth a destination Australia, but will really go some way to actually getting the industry up and running. And I guess on that, it's then making it feel safe. We just were granted the ACI accreditation for a safe airport, and I'll touch on that shortly. It very much around how do we give people confidence that the airport and the facility they're moving through is at a standard that's globally recognised. So doing a lot of internal promotions, doing a lot of external promotions to make it visible. I mean, those that are on the call that are managing infrastructure, you'll be very aware you do cleaning. We do a lot of cleaning. We do more cleaning now, but changing the chemicals so people can actually smell the chemicals that we're using. And historically, you may not have wanted to make the airport smell like a hospital, but actually moving a bit towards so people walk in and go, oh, it smells clean. No, it was always clean, but it smells cleaner. Yeah. So it's around public. It's about getting the confidence back in where we see, which then comes on to the challenges. And probably the biggest one is inconsistency. So what we're seeing is airlines, governments around the world, an inconsistent approach on what they're asking for. Temperature checks, no temperature checks. COVID tests, no COVID tests. Cleaning the handrails after every flight, not cleaning the handrails. And I think this is a real issue as the industry moves forward. And I'm hoping ACI, as a type of body, really enforce what we actually want going forward. Otherwise, the airports and airlines will be laboured with 20 or 30 or more different standards, which is going to be really difficult to manage. But more worryingly, it can be confusing. If you jump on one plane and people are wearing full PPE, you jump on another plane, or you get off the plane and people aren't, which message are we sending? And it would be remiss of me to mention commercial as well. So, you know, in respect to our biggest challenge, it is certainly in Australia. The airports have had no direct financial support. We are still seen as a critical service. Airlines have had government support to keep them flying. The airports have had virtually zero, some support in the security recharges and domestic travel. Airports are a critical piece of infrastructure, but most of us are privately owned. So we've not seen any government support on that, but we continue to operate. Despite some of the commercial wins that have been ahead of us. So, yeah, so I guess really in summary, getting people back on planes, giving them the confidence, but we need consistency. I think if we don't work together as an industry, we're going to be quite inconsistent, which will be confusing for the public that get on the planes.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, that's a really good point, Scott, that you have raised about the consistency, because, right now passengers are pretty used to when they travel, the check-in process. Most airports have it similar, even whether there's automation or you have to go to a manual counter, you go from check-in to security to immigration, landside, airside and board a plane. That experience is consistent. You don't need a guide really. But with COVID-19, I managed a trip for business to Malaysia, and we had to check the requirements every day because they changed every single day, and they were not the same. It was not consistent. So, as you said, hopefully bodies like ACI, IATA will work together with the government organizations, because, the government have to be involved to bring this through. To put that consistency. And I think Leila will agree as well. Australia, Finland, two opposite sides of the globe, but requiring the same sort of consistent experience with for their passengers. So both of you have come back to say, you've got the financial measures in place, and bring back traveler confidence, continuing to invest. I've heard both of you say that, in Finland, Finavia is continuing to invest, preparing for the future. In West Australia, Scott, you've said you guys have been investing with, investing in sponsorship, with for travel and tourism to boom, and also to looking after your airline. So it's really interesting, and the recovery packages that both of you have been putting through. I'd be quite interested to hear from Richard. Our customers have been impacted, but us as suppliers, Richard, we have also been impacted, and we've continued to support our customers. Could you walk us through some of the measures that we've put in place, for recovery, and how we're supporting our customers?
Sure. Thank you, Sarah, and the other members of the panel, and hello to everybody in the audience. Yes, Sarah, I think first of all, both Amadeus and ICM, our name actually says it. Amadeus Airport IT, the largest travel IT company, and this specifically being the Airport IT division. And ICM, our full name is ICM Airport Technics. We're joined at the hip with our clients. We are completely dependent on their success. So when it goes badly with our clients, we struggle as well. And clearly, it's had quite a major impact, and also led us to have to deal with some cost cutting, which, yes, the financial impact, as the other two speakers said, that was number one. Number one, we have to try and make the books balance, or try and see how long this crisis is going to last, how deep the cuts need to be, so that we're still viable at the end of this crisis. So that's the one side. But on the other side, very similar to what they said, is we have to continue to innovate. Because if we're not innovating, if we don't have solutions that our clients need through the crisis and into the recovery, I mean, then we shouldn't be here. That gives us our right to exist. So this is the difficult balance that we as an industry have to have. Costs on the one side, but the continued innovation on the other. And you actually mentioned, Sarah, you mentioned some of the innovations that we as direct company have been involved with as a member of the Amadeus group, those touchless innovations. And we've also continued, despite many challenges, to continue to roll out our contracts. So some of you might have read or seen in the news that Dubai Airport went live just 3 weeks ago with a number of ICM Series 7 auto backdrop units and our latest kiosks. So very proud of the team that we were able to, despite all the challenges and the restrictions on travel. And by the way, you can't do a bag drop unit Series 7 remotely. You have to be there to build it. So we do as much as we can remotely, but we had to move people on site for local build supervision and some of the commissioning work. But happy to say that we've achieved at least our goals in the short term. Clearly, there have been delays, and I'll come back to that. But yes, all in all, coping, hanging in there, and trusting, like everybody else, that this is going to be the end, must be in sight. And by the way, I agree with you. The recovery has started. We are starting to see the bag numbers increase slowly but surely.
Great, thank you, Richard. So we sort of touched on IATA and ACI, and I just wanted to ask both Leah and Scott this question. So IATA and ACI have been advocating heavily to governments, especially with the EU Commission regarding pre-departure, arrival, affordable antigen rapid testing. What are your thoughts about rapid tests before and after arrival? And will this help our industry to recover and climb out of the deep hole it is in? Is this going to be the future of travel? 3 years from now, are we still going to be requiring these tests? And one of the points that Scott raised earlier as well, the inconsistency. Sometimes you have the whole please disinfect the handrail once a flight has come through. Some say there is no need to disinfect. So we need this consistency. So Leila, you had mentioned that the deferring travel restrictions have impacted your airport operations. Could you elaborate on this a little bit more, please?
Yeah. So as Scott mentioned, consistency is super important for us, and it has been a clear problem in our area. So the different countries have approached the travel restrictions in different ways. And for example, in Finland, we have been suffering from slower recovery of travel than in the rest of Europe due to the tighter travel restrictions. But also the travel restrictions and approaches to them have changed over the course of the year. So several times as the government has learned more, we have had change of approach and of course sort of also mirroring the situation in other countries. So there has been changes to the travel restrictions. And what it means for us as an airport operator, of course, we have to make extensive effort, both sort of people-wise and money-wise, to collaborate with the authorities in the country and in the cities to ensure somehow sort of smooth processing and then changing those processes whenever something changes in the restrictions. So what comes to the tests, so in Finland as well, we are sort of introducing this kind of testing before and after arrival, and the municipalities are responsible for the testing and health processes at our airports. And there we have had a very interesting, although this is a very non-technical solution for the rapid testing, but our local municipality at Helsinki Airport is implementing the use of corona dogs to sniff the COVID-19 virus, and it seems to be very popular amongst the travelers. So there is a huge line to the dog corona tests, and it's of course it's less sort of invasive than the sticking to your nose test, because you just sort of swipe yourself with the cloth, and then the dogs sort of sniff the cloths sort of in different booths. And I personally hope this trend would catch up wider. I think it's very sort of cheap and simple solution, and the dogs actually sort of are more accurate than the real sort of medical testing, so they can smell the virus even in its earlier stages. And at airports we are somehow sort of used to seeing dogs at work, so the passengers are very accustomed to having like the custom dogs sniffing for drugs and other sort of contraband. So this kind of virus testing through dogs, I think, will be some kind of future. It's quite easy to teach a nose work dog to smell new viruses, and as the situation sort of evolves, and we might have some other viruses coming after COVID-19, I think this kind of solutions will increase its popularity.
That's really quite interesting. Not quite sure how to comment or ask a follow-up question on that.
Yeah.
But thank you for sharing that with us. And Scott, so in Australia, the 2021 budget is saying no international travel until vaccines in place. So which for me, as I used to come to Australia at least 5-6 times a year. This is like a big impact on my life and my lifestyle. But this must have a significant impact for your operation, revenues, etc. So what action is Perth Airport taking with state and federal government to influence and perhaps reverse this? It's a tough question, Scott. Sorry.
Thanks, Sarah. That's not a loaded question. We've only got 5 minutes, haven't we, or 10 minutes? Otherwise, this is about a 1-hour panel discussion. I'll touch on the testing first. And again, this is probably my opinion, but I think it's gathering more speed, more views. If we look back 30, 40 years ago, when security was new in the airports, and everyone went, this is nothing. This is not going to go anywhere. And I think it started with the wand, and it went on to X-rays, and we are where we are today. I think there's a view that biosecurity will be taken as a national threat going forward, which comes onto the view of a travel passport. I think the way we deal with security in airports at the moment and globally on a consistent standard will come into the bio threats. I think this pandemic has absolutely exposed the reality and the speed that a virus can actually travel around the world, and the world was unprepared for it. So I think there's a lot of work going forward in actually how we manage the next one. We don't want the next one, but I think the travel passport absolutely will become part of normal travel. I don't know what that means yet, and I think it comes back to my previous comment: consistency. Travel passport, fully support it. I don't think anyone will not support it. At the moment, though, when you look at what each individual government's doing, the government A will not trust government B, and government B won't trust government C because they're getting tested at different levels or different laboratories. But Perth Airport, or Australia, certainly Perth Airport, dramatic. So 99% down on international travel. For those that don't know Australia so well, so we're 90% down on interstate travel. That's from Perth to the Sydneys and the Melbournes of the world. And about 20% down on intrastate travel. That's travel within the state of Western Australia. So yeah, I mean, our passenger numbers are looking at around 3 million this year compared to 16. So material. There is absolutely no doubt on the material impact. On the other side, you would say we're quite lucky. We're quite lucky to still have 3 million plus passengers that are purely on interstate traffic, which is predominantly our FIFO workforce that come in and out of the mining sites. So an awful lot of work. And we have a federal state and a federal parliament and a federal body to deal with, and we have a state parliament to deal with. So federally, it's around international borders. An awful lot of work on the international borders, and some of you have seen that Last week there was a safe bubble started with New Zealand. I think that is a really positive step, and hopefully it's the start of more to come. And the federal government have been quite vocal in the past week about potential safe bubbles with Singapore, South Korea, and Japan, and the Fiji Islands. And that's all around green lanes, and it comes back to that: how do passengers move through the airport? How can we separate countries that are in the green bubble from countries that are outside of the green bubble? And I think it's given the regulators assurance that the airport can manage the situation on the ground. And then we have from a state government, and I think I said at the start, we're working really closely with the state government, and it's all around when we reopen, and the tourism, getting people back on planes. But it is a challenge. We're dealing, Australia and Perth in WA, incredibly lucky. We've had no transmission since April, which, for many of you on the call that are around the world, that's an incredible number. So in WA, life is nearly normal. So there is a real hesitancy about opening up the borders and dare I say, letting the virus in. But we can't stay where we are forever. So it's all about the airport giving assurance that our process is sound, our process is good, and that people that walk through our airport will be having the best attention that we can possibly give them, be it social distancing, physical distancing, be it the cleaning, be it the remote check-ins. We have tents outside some of the terminals for the minor. So it's working with all the parties to get the best solution, but not easy because there's an awful lot of stakeholders at play.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, there are just a couple of questions from the audience, or maybe more like a comments. There's a question from Martin, just along the lines of the rapid test. Do the panelists consider on-airport rapid test as an airport process that is here to stay, such as security and passport checks? And I think that's what both Leila and you have alluded to. It's probably that's the sort of future that we're talking about. And Scott, what you meant when you mentioned about the health passports, I remember in the 70s the little yellow book that we all had to carry. If you went to like certain countries, you had to have all the vaccinations and you had to prove it. I think we're going to see the evolution of the yellow health passport coming through. And I think there was another. Sorry.
Yeah, I think it's a challenge, Sarah, because I think it's. And again, I'll talk about Australia. We talk about health screening and health temperature checks. But unfortunately, like in Australia, there's no legislative instrument that would actually deal with somebody coming in the airport that's got a temperature. What do we actually do with someone? Whose responsibility is it? So I think when I talk about the biometric or the bio passport going forward, that may give the airports the authority to actually deal and manage this, because I think it may fall onto the airports at some point, but we need instruments to actually give like we do with security, and give the airport the authority to actually deal with incidents and issues.
Yeah, very, very good point that you've raised there. All right, so a question to Richard. How many of the projects you've been working on have been delayed or cancelled? Or have you seen an impact of what is the impact that you've seen on automation projects since COVID-19 has hit our industry?
Sarah, just to answer the question, every single project that we have on the books has been impacted. The question is how much the impact has been. Fortunately, I can tell you that none of our projects have been terminated. So that's good news. By and large, our clients do see a future beyond the COVID crisis. So that's good news. But you mentioned it, that we're busy with a project at Perth Airport. Or did Scott mention it? I can't remember. Scott, the one you can't turn on yet. So that's our kit. That's our kit in there. And we hope you get around to switching it on. But your story is not unique. So some projects like Dubai we've been able to complete, but others in Japan and Perth and elsewhere have been delayed. As far as the increase in the demand, however, seems there. So the inquiries at least have not stopped. We have formal inquiries sometimes now in new markets that we haven't seen before. I don't know if there's anyone from the USA on the call. There might be. So we are seeing for the first time formal inquiries out of that market. but also definitely Europe is alive and well, and also here in Asia Pac. There are sufficient inquiries. So it seems like the market in general is seeing a future beyond the COVID crisis, which is encouraging, because I must say that's my major concern. Sarah, how long is it going to last? What does next year look like? What does the year after that look like?
Yeah.
So these are important questions. So it's good to see that there is some confidence still amongst our clients.
Yeah, I think it was one of the points that I made in the blueprint to recovery to say that automation, we are going to see that, your face is your passport. That sort of technologies will definitely need to come in place, to minimize the touching of surfaces, to be able to facilitate the implementation of, physical distancing or safe distancing, etc. So we are really seeing the acceleration of automation to support, I guess, COVID-19. It was on people's plans, but maybe a little bit further in the future. But so they brought it forward is, probably one of the outtakes that we can take from this.
Yes, and you're aware of this, but let me tell the broader audience that ICM is with Amadeus. We're busy in the USA at Fort Lauderdale. That went public a couple of weeks ago for the biometrics boarding, where the face is literally the passport or boarding pass token when you go into the aircraft, as well as at Narita Airport, where we're working with NEC to roll out the one-to-N or one-to-many matching for all the touch points in the airport, check-in, bag drop, immigration, as well as the boarding.
Yep, great. Thank you. So Leila, from since you're from the IT side of Finavia, which technology has been or will be pivotal in addressing these challenges?
Yeah. So yeah, I think that the technology can actually help in multiple places. So we have been talking about the places where we see a lot of congestion and they are sort of spreading the people out through different points of using technology, and then also not having to have the face-to-face contact with the employees is going to help, and they are sort of what we have been now looking into is a lot of like security related technologies, because that's usually the place where people have to line up. Of course, the check-in and that is other place, but security, especially sort of how do we make sure that we can sort of do rapid scanning of the items, and also how to sort of make sure that we, for example, disinfect the trays and all that kind of stuff. So those are kind of new technologies which we have been now testing, but also the existing technologies, like how to do the check-in most efficiently. That's a big pivotal question for us. And also what we mentioned sort of before, like automating and optimizing the flow. So making sure that we allocate the planes and the stands in a way that sort of allows for smooth routes for the passengers in the terminal. What I find super interesting is this biometric solutions, and that's also there we see that yes, they are quite interesting solutions, but at the moment for us, I see there also the lack of consistency in, for example, privacy laws, etc., is making it a bit difficult to use it throughout the industry and throughout sort of our value chain. If we think that somebody is leaving from an airport in the USA and then entering into the EU, sort of having the whole sort of journey as sort of through biometric recognition is probably not at the moment possible. So there, sort of how do we ensure the safety of our passengers through them not having to touch anything, or or work face to face with anybody, but also how to ensure their privacy while they do that. So those are interesting and sometimes a bit contradicting things as well, which we need to manage. So
yeah, it's very true. I mean, very good point that you have raised. But what I think is interesting with COVID-19, and all countries have implemented contact tracing apps. Most governments,
yes.
at least definitely in Asia Pacific. I'm not really sure about what it is in Europe. We're giving our contact details. You're scanning, you're checking in, etc. So it's a really interesting, but it's a much bigger conversation for probably another panel
Yes.
to discuss on biometrics. But while I have you, Leila, there's a question from the audience, and it's from Andre Carrillo. So again, to everybody in the audience, I apologize for mispronouncing all of your names. So big apology on that one. I think it was from Andre. Sorry, just give me 1 second. Or it could be from, oh no, it's from actually Ari. And I can't definitely pronounce the surname of Ari's. You, in the beginning, you had indicated you started in-house development versus procuring COT systems. What are the key criteria for you between build and buy?
Yeah, so we usually buy if we can. So if there's something which is suitable out there on the market, that's usually an easier option. And sometimes also if we look at the total cost of ownership, it's also cheaper when you have somebody else to actually sort of support the solution and develop it forward. But now we have been seeing that there are some areas which are sort of new areas of innovation where there isn't so many ready-made solutions on the market, and we noticed that on our sort of operational stuff actually has good knowledge about how the airport works, and especially of course how our airports work. So it may be that by listening them and building solutions specifically for certain operational process, we actually get to faster and better solutions, and we get to utilize some newer technologies which wouldn't be yet available in the COTS solution. So for example, on areas like algorithm-based optimization. So those are things where we have done our own development instead of going to the market. So that's a big one for us. And of course, sort of that's also very interesting how that plays out, because I think all the airports are actually doing somewhat their own development, and how to sort of share that knowledge and what we have been able to do. It may be that those processes would be also useful for, and software would be useful for other airports. So also sort of sharing that with other airports is something that we are really looking forward to and really keen to do.
Yeah, that's really quite interesting. And I guess like algorithms together with data,
Yes.
There's a lot that you could probably build out of that. And I suppose that kind of makes sense why you want to develop that in-house. All right, so I think we're running out of time. So I just do have one question to all three of you, and this is really to do with commercial models. I think the first half of this pandemic, I can speak for Richard and myself. We spent a lot of time with our customers on renegotiating contract terms, or doing some addendums to contract terms to help them, to manage their costs, and versus what's in the contract. So, do you see, to all three of you, do you see a need for commercial models of your contracts to change because of this pandemic? And if so, what is it that you're looking for? What do you think would best suit your operating environment? Maybe we start with Scott, and then Leila and Richard.
Thanks, Sarah. Noting the time, so I'll be quick. There's no doubt that the commercial model, certainly in Perth, contracts that were negotiated even 6 months ago, or 9 months ago and 10 years ago, nobody would have contemplated the position we're in at the moment. And particularly around how we actually get remunerated on a per passenger basis, like most airports around the world. Obviously, we saw a big shift from passenger traffic to freighter traffic. Freighter traffic had always been an absolute minority for the airport, and internationally, the freighter traffic is now the biggest part of the international side of the airport. And obviously, the commercial agreements in relation to that never contemplated that we'd have to leave terminals open, etc., because the revenue we generate from those planes is quite minuscule, and they used to be handled in amongst all of the international traffic. So there's no doubt that we really need to open these things and open these contracts and speak with the airlines to what's a more fair and equitable way if they're still flying and earning revenue from cargo. I'm not saying that we earn revenue from the cargo, but there's got to be at least a covering of costs when we're opening the airport just for one plane.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, that's a really good point. Thank you, Scott. Leila?
Yeah, and there, of course, if we think about how we charge our customers, that's also highly regulated. So that's again a topic which needs discussion sort of across the industry and also sort of across the world. But if we think about sort of our own contracts with our subcontractors and, for example, IT providers, so there, as you, Sarah, mentioned in the beginning, the scalability is quite key. So being able to ramp down and ramp up also the infrastructure and service levels is something that we are now doing in a ways that we couldn't imagine before, and that's something that all of our partners have had to sort of learn how to do and deal with somewhat. Of course, sort of simple thing to say is, of course, the payment terms. so that's something in the contractual models, but I think that indeed the scalability is something which will stay. So that's something that now we have always thought that travel is quite stable. So there is always going to be a certain amount of travel despite what the economic situation is going to be, and now we are seeing that that's not necessarily true. So that's, and nobody knows how the situation will look like in 1 year or 2 years time. So definitely sort of flexibility and scalability are the key.
Yeah, thank you, Leila. And Richard, you'd have to say it in 30 seconds because I think we're over time now. The next session needs to start.
So Sarah, we listen to our clients. Clearly, we've got we've been willing to share some of the pain. But it's a matter of finding each other through this time and also working out something that can work for both beyond the crisis. So let's not only find something in the crisis, let's improve things for later on. But yes, flexible and willing, open for business, open to talk.
Thank you. So I want to thank, Leila, Scott, Richard, thank you so much for joining me on this panel session. And to the audience, thank you so much for joining us. I hope that, you found the session informative. Feel free to reach out to us, separately or at a later point in time. Sorry we couldn't answer all the questions that have come through, but, thank you to the organizers for this conference and for allowing us to participate. It was, at least I had fun. So thanks very much. Over to you, Craig.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you very much, everyone there. A really great session for us all to understand the road to recovery for you all and the industry. So yeah, thank you very much. And please do check out the sponsors and exhibitors page on the Summit platform, where you can find out more from Amadeus and also to connect with their team. So next to come on the Summit agenda is our first in-depth webinar to focus on how airports have been managing COVID-19. So we do hope you can all join us for that. So thank you, everyone, and goodbye.